body commissions has jurisdictions. Comments deemed otherwise pursuant to the County Code of Conduct and the Government Code may be grounds for immediately terminating a speaker's comment period. So I just wanted to say that a couple of weeks ago, I came down with the Bell's palsy, so it's kind of bugging me. Hopefully you can understand me very well, you know. Thank you. So item 2.
Yes, Committee Member Baird. Present. Kavanaugh. Katz.
Here.
Heath.
Here.
Lynn. Absent. Thing. Okay, Yen.
Present.
Joining us remotely, Shake.
Here.
Casper Zach.
Here.
Thank you. Approve the minutes. The minutes for the September 3rd, 2024 meeting have been delivered to committee members and copies posted on the City Hall bulletin boards. If there are no corrections or additions, a motion is ordered to approve these minutes. Is there any corrections or additions, minutes? Everybody, that's good.
Public input.
Any public input?
I'll move adoption to the minutes.
A second.
So motion made by Casper Zach, seconded by Pamela Beer. All in favor?
Aye. You need to do a roll call. Okay.
Motion passed then unanimously then. It makes a difference if I hold on to the talk. The item 4, upcoming agenda topics. Items currently on future agenda item list, vacant storefronts, parking plan update, arts murals in downtown, precise plan update, school performances in the downtown, and wayfinding in November. So any input from the committee?
Would like to just announce the trick and treat event on the 26th of.
Can you talk a little louder?
Sorry, the 26th of October, we're gonna have the trick and treat event. Are you gonna participate, right? Yes, that is. And I'm gonna also invite the PD and the FD if they can bring out their trucks.
Oh, great.
So that's kind of fun to have, in addition to the bouncy house outside. And that's it.
Fun.
If you haven't gone, it's great fun.
What time that would be?
From 2 to 6, I believe, yeah.
2 to 6.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. That's great. Any other?
One suggestion, we had a meeting a couple of years ago with the Visual Arts Committee. Are there any plans to do that? And also maybe with the Performing Arts Committee, they're sort of looking at some of their priorities and maybe shifting some things around. And since they're an integral part of downtown, it might be good to have a future meeting with them, or at least a report from the Performing Arts Committee.
Yeah, we had a performing art person here one time, yeah.
Right.
Great, any input from the public? No, that's done. Then we'll move on to item 5, oral communications from public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. State law prohibits the committee from acting on non-agenda items. No public. Zoom? None. Thank you. We'll move to item 6, unfinished business. Item 6.1. Downtown development update, October 2024. Planning is, division staff will provide an update on downtown development project. Morning, Vincent, thank you.
Morning, everyone.
Associate Planner, just probably roughly this month for the downtown developments. The only one that I can point you guys to is on page 4 of the development updates. Item number 13 for 194-198 Cashler Street. That is a provisional use permit for office on the upper floors and a new plan community permit, development review permit, and historic preservation permit for a 3-story addition to the existing historic building as a corner there, the Agave building. That is scheduled for city council hearing on October 8th, which is next Tuesday. And with that, we'll be moving forward to council after it got a recommendation for approval by the zoning administrator on August.
We do have a question on Zoom.
Go ahead.
This is Mary. Last time, there was a item about the hotel development coming back to the summaries, and I just was wondering if there's a follow-up. Last time you mentioned you wanted to check in with the planner for the hotel project, so just wondering if there's an update. Thank you. I'll go back on mute.
Yes, there is no further update at this point. I did speak with the planner. They said that they're just still in discussions with city staff, but there's no further update from there.
I might.
I seem to recall that there was an application in for them to redo the courtyard and close that in as part of the restaurant. Is that still a project? Am I remembering incorrectly, or is that?
I believe that's part of this existing project, because
Okay.
it was mentioned that's replacing an existing outdoor patio.
Oh, okay, right,
Which is
okay.
a portion in the rear of that project.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, question on, I walked by it this morning, where there's sorry, I didn't get myself organized here. A 58 square foot
For-
facade improvement, it's where Mervin's used to be. So how do you do 58 square feet? That's like 5 by 10. So are they enclosing like an entry doorway so people
Yeah,
have the wind blowing in on the?
so it's the initial kind of a few feet at the front of the facade that they are kind of pushing out to match the other kind of buildings along that area. So it's not that large of an addition, but it's kind of just to match the existing.
But there's 2 pillars, cement pillars, so that's going to be incorporated.
They're gonna close that whole thing off. I
The
saw
whole
the
thing.
plans, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not, the project is limited to just like where the Mervin's location is. They're just pushing that facade out, but it will encroach into the public right of way and into that alleyway area as well.
Okay.
But there's no addition into it. It's just gonna be that temporarily closed, correct? Yeah, so it's gonna be temporarily closed for as they work on that addition.
Okay, I'll look at it again. Thank you.
When you say the alleyway is gonna be closed, the corridor?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be temporarily closed off for a little while as they work on the
Do you know
addition.
that timeline?
The time, so they are currently working through the building permits as they get a little bit farther along in the phasing of the construction, we'll have a better sense. And we've already let a few of the businesses know we do anticipate a temporary closure of the pedestrian alleyway for a period of time. We just don't know what that time is just yet. As they get a little bit farther in the progress, we'll understand when the closure will be. There will be some scaffolding work that will need to occur to fix the facade, as Vincent had mentioned. And there will be a point where they will need to close that alleyway to do the work inside. So there's the exterior facade that's happening, but also there are doorways along that entryway or that walkway, I should say. Work needs to happen in there as well to fix that part. So it will be closed for a brief period of time. And once we have a better sense of where they are in the construction process, we'll be able to advise the business community.
And where does the staging take place? Where they're gonna park vehicles, unload all the stuff?
So it is currently envisioned, there are two aspects of staging, so they are looking to utilize approximately 13 parking spaces in the back of the building, which is parking lot 2. As far as construction staging in terms of workers and things of that nature, the developer has another property in downtown that they're able to park their vehicles there. And then as far as having some of the equipment and materials that will be within parking lot 2 for a temporary basis. And we are estimating it'll be about 13 parking spaces for about a 2-week period.
Actually, I'm not making any value judgment. Does the city charge someone for taking parking spaces?
So I have a question, I always wonder that if when you close an alleyway like this, we're talking about, I've seen it in traffic for detours, it's set up somehow. You set up a detour for walking by or used to it, and what the criteria is, how do you do that?
Yeah, we anticipate that, once we kind of get some better information on how long the close off will be, there'll be signage to kind of provide pedestrians detours and other ways to access the parking lot.
Thank you.
I assume Cherry Lane is not gonna be closed, so is that the 13 sign?
Sure, the access into the parking lot will not be closed off in any way, shape, or form. The impact will be on the parking spaces. So there should be full egress within the parking lot, and people's ability to walk around they would either need to go down to Villa or up to Dana during that temporary closure of the alleyway.
So any public input, any public proposal? Zoom?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, great, thank you. So thank you very much. Thank
you.
Great day.
And maybe just one quick note, I know there's been multiple requests for an inclusion of a map. Staff discussed it and we just don't have the capacity to build out a map every month to go along with the report. So just wanted to address that since that's come up before as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So moving on, we move to item number.
Oh, it should be 6.2.
It's two.
That's an edit.
I thought I had to discuss. And then Castro Street update. Staff will provide a verbal update on current effort and activities related to Castro Street.
All right, just a couple of updates. So just a reminder that Music on Castro will continue till the end of this month. Takes place on the 200 block on Wednesday evenings. So just a reminder to the public that we've got a couple more shows happening before that wraps as we head into fall. Also, we're seeing the construction happening on El Camino Real moving here. As you know, there's sort of a number of different pieces that are happening. All the curb improvements have taken place already, but there is now work that's happening to add in bike lanes and improve the road. And that began in Palo Alto in early September, and they're anticipating that it'll be making its way here to us in Mountain View early October, which it's officially October, so keep your eyes out for that. There, of course, will be impacts, as this is right near our downtown, so just for people to be aware. Yeah.
Pam mentioned this, I don't know how long ago, but on Castro Street in El Camino, that when people make a U-turn and that extended kind of a bottom area, the other day I just saw a lady smash her car over that curb because she thought it was shorter. I don't know what happened to that car underneath, but it was horrible to watch, and I just happened to go to Chase. And it would like, it literally something needs to be just like a taller, like a stand or a yellow thing, just, you know, to pop up because people really don't see that extended curvature on the, in the center divide. If, I don't know who can,
Yeah, it's a state, but.
Yeah, it's a Caltrans property, so it's not owned, it's not within Mountain View's jurisdiction, so.
is it something that Mountain View could just like tell them, like, hey, can we put something up?
Put some cones up and a flag out it.
Yeah, I think we'll have to see what the improvements look like
Yeah.
after they're completely done with the project. I mean, certainly anyone can reach out to Caltrans. I can make note to our Public Works team as well. I'm not sure what mechanisms they have, but I know that we've been in communication with this project, so. So it's,
I bounced my car around that 2 days ago.
yeah,
And I recall, we brought this thing in the committee a few times, but I think probably what Amanda is saying, that would be the best thing to go directly to the Caltrans. That, yes, I know that.
Question back, sorry, on El Camino. I was sort of under the impression that they would be doing the grinding up, you know, where they got that machine and tears up the asphalt and put down new. So in Palo Alto, it looks like they've just sort of done a top coat. So do we know, is that the procedure all the way through on El Camino? Or are they going to be doing the true grinding up? Because it seems like there's segments in Mountain View where it's really bad and needs to be taken down, you know, to a deeper level. Do you know how the?
yeah, because this isn't a city project, I can't speak to whether there'll be something different happening in Mountain View. But they do have a project webpage, which I can send out. Then we have some additional information.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. And actually, I believe, Pamela, to that point, the Downtown Digest does have a information about this project in here. I believe we did an update. And there should be a little more information about the project in the Downtown Digest, as well as contact information in terms of where to go to get more information.
So so you have mountainview.gov, El Camino.
Yeah, and there's some links off of that.
There are links off that. Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, it will be bumpy almost immediately after it's resurfaced, so
Yeah.
somebody will trench and.
So wanted to just bring this to your attention as well. There is plans to open the cold weather shelter again at the Trinity Church. There's a couple of approvals that need to take place. It's going to City Council next week. There's a request to designate a couple of parking spots for overnight parking. As you know, overnight parking is not currently allowed in any of the city facilities. So this request will be going to City Council to make an exception. And then the next day, it will go to the zoning administrator, which will be approving sort of the use of Trinity Church for a cold weather shelter. So a lot happening around this. The plan had originally been to have them extend how long they were there. It used to be from November to March. And their intention is to go from October to April. We're a little behind with our approval, so it won't open until November, but in future years, we may see that extension happen.
How does this work? Do people need to sign up for this or they could just show up?
Yeah, great question.
So the cold weather shelter is in partnership with the county and the church. It is focused on families, so young children. Typically it is a mother and young children, but yes, they can show up. There is a check-in time. Memory serves, it's about 4 o'clock, and then an exit time as well. But they do provide showers, beds, but it's designed for families with young children.
So it's overnight. It's not a extended stay.
No, it's an overnight response. This is actually a continuation of a program that's been in place now for a few years. There is a desire to start the shelter, as Amanda mentioned, started a little bit earlier in the year and extended a little bit later in the year. So they are going through a use permit process to allow for that greater time length. And the action by council is really allowing us to designate parking spots or kind of putting in reserve and signing 15 spots available for staff and patrons of the service.
And what's the capacity of this shelter? Like how many people can come in?
I believe it's 20, up to 25 families. I need to double check.
I think it's like 40 beds or something like that.
It's not very large. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact number, but I would say in terms of utilization, it's on the mild side, except when we have really extreme weather events, then
I was
see.
about to say the capacity. So does it give, do we have numbers of last year? Like how many?
Oh,
used it?
we can follow up with the committee on that.
As I mentioned, the Downtown Digest, the September Downtown Digest, which is available here, it's also available online. Just some updates. We did a number of articles on vacancy in the downtown, which has been a big topic of interest and concern. We did a very quick recap of the Art and Wine Festival, as I mentioned, El Camino Real construction project. So a number of different updates in there. We'll be putting out another digest later this month, and then taking a little bit of a break as we head into the holiday season. And those are my updates.
Great. I just have a, comment about those music on Castro and music on Plaza. Was the last week was the last one in Plaza here. But in Castro, I attended quite a few of those, but those are really fun. You know, you tried it. Some people really make it family affair. You know, they come back, they get the whole table and they bring the food and they enjoy the whole thing. Very nicely done. So just want to say that. Any comments from the public on Castro update? No?
I have a question regarding the, I think two rounds ago, we had that lady come in about talking about taxing properties. Is there any update on that? Like, is there,
So yeah, that was the city's measure. It's a possessory transfer. Property transfer tax. Oh, goodness, I was confusing multiple taxes in my head. So it will go to a vote.
It's on the ballot.
It's on the ballot, yeah. So we'll know more after November. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we move to item 7.1. The John Zoglin from El Camino Health will provide an overview of El Camino Health and their community benefits grant program. Welcome, John.
Great, thank you.
Very much being here.
Well, good. So obviously I've sort of stolen this deck from elsewhere within the hospital, but thanks for inviting me. I'll spend about 5 minutes on the background, where these funds come from, these community benefit funds. Maybe 5 minutes on how they're being allocated now, and then we can talk about whether there's anything specific might apply to this committee. So again, going way back, the El Camino Healthcare District is a self-created taxable, sort of like the old Mello-Roos, I think. This group probably knows better than I do, though it's permanent. So, after World War II, all hospitals were largely in cities. So there's intent of the state to build out hospitals in rural, which of course, Mountain View, Los Altos, Sunnyvale were rural agricultural back in 1956. And so there's a measure passed November 56, creating this self-taxing district to generate funds to build a hospital, which was built first in 1961. Then, of course, to meet the new earthquake laws, rebuilt in 2009. So all of us on our property taxes, part of our 1%, part of this goes to El Camino Healthcare District. And so right now it's about $13 million a year in aggregate. By law, a third of that has to go to capital projects. The rest of it, 9-10 million, can go to whatever. Since the hospital, we'll separate the hospital versus the district, but the hospital's been generating positive cash for the past 15 years, we're able to apply all the tax money back into the community. I've actually asked, could we just return those to the citizens? The answer is no, because it's part of your 1%. So if it didn't come to El Camino Healthcare District, it would go to elsewhere in the county. So we believe that we can help. And the mission of the district is to improve the health of the people who live and work and go to school in the district. Again, it doesn't mean you can't do anything outside the district, but the goal is to improve the health of the district. So perfect. So yeah, no, actually go back, sorry, back to the one we had there, sorry. So, what we try to do is to be, we're taking tax money, so we try to be as accountable and transparent as we can. So past couple of years, we've come up with these, sort of guidelines here. And again, number 3 is what we focus on, and we'll look at that a little more in a second. Again, we try to make that professional. So now, what does John want to spend money on? So first of all, there's a triannual county health assessment for Santa Clara County. It's required throughout the country, I believe, not just the state. So we have this review. The next one will be coming up in 25. And, that tends to be a little more South County, San Jose, as a lot of things are based on population, but it's just a health assessment. Where are you? What's your incidence of diabetes and all these different maladies. So based on that survey, we then try to focus on those areas and address those areas. Again, district being all of Los Altos, Mountain View, most of Sunnyvale, most of Los Altos Hills. Few niches in Cupertino, Santa Clara, and Palo Alto, probably based on where orchards were in 1956. You can't tell, but that's the way the map sort of looks. So we try to be professional about it. So we have staff, so that rather than the district board saying, again, John likes this, we have the staff work with community organizations to try to identify where we can benefit the community most. So yeah, if we could go to the next slide. So the top 3, you can see, again, we want to focus on healthcare access, primarily for underserved communities, of course, behavioral health, diabetes, and obesity, and then smaller sort of secondary chronic conditions and economic stability. Again, we try to focus on where do we add value in the panoply, so everybody can work on housing. But there's the county, there's other institutions that tend to focus on that, so we don't focus too much on housing other than providing healthcare to unhoused and folks that need that. So you can see the mix there, 50% for healthcare. And again, we try to, with our 9 million, the Lucille Packard Foundation can give money. We try not to just give money. We try to add value. Where can we add value? So we'll see when we see the list. For example, we fund most of the school nursing programs in the area. All right, so then we try to bring them together to share best practices. And we can bring our nurses in to try. So we try to provide areas of healthcare, again, not just providing funding, but where can we add some value? We can go to the next slide. I've sort of talked about, the guiding principles. You saw the mix there. And then we'll go to the next slide, which is a terrible slide that I created on the way to the airport. And if we go to the next one, this next one's not so bad. All right, so what do we do? And then that following one is the list of organizations is the terrible one. So again, we fund the time frame is end of February. We take applications. There's an online, form you can fill out. And we sort of, I don't know, it's like I guess we're almost like a Series B venture capitalist. We're trying to look for new organizations. And we fund a lot of organizations we've done for decades, but we're always looking for new organizations. So that's one aspect that maybe, this committee might be able to help us identify. But, they need to be somewhat mature because again, we're spending public dollars. So we need to balance that out. But so we get these applications the end of February. And again, we'll work with people, if there's new organizations or if it's an existing organization, like if Mayview, Sequoia comes up with a new program, we encourage those too. We're trying to develop new, the needs of the community change. So let's make sure we're changing. Who knows what's going to happen with CHAP, what's going to happen with that. So maybe they may have some new programs they come up with to try to ask for funding. But so we'll work with them on their application, due the end of February. And then the next 2 months, largely, again, the staff of the hospital works with the organizations, clarifying what we need. And then ultimately, they come up with a recommendation in May that comes before the district board on who to fund. 98% of the time we try to accept it. Again, we try to avoid sort of the earmarking approach that, this person, this board member likes this one, so we want this, but we will ask. We generally we're able to fund about 2/3, 3/4 of the application is what it has been historically. And again, those that are not funded, again, it may not meet really what our focus is, the application or the organization might not be really able to deliver in our point of view. We have for about 15 years, and I'm gonna take a little credit for that. I mean, my background is business. I know nothing about health. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. I don't play one on YouTube. But so my background is business, dashboards, KPIs, key performance indicators. So we have, since about 2010, every organization does have 3 goals. Now, sometimes they're process goals, not outcomes. They're can be a little McDonald's, 2,000 people served. But at least we do have specific deliverables that's developed with the staff in this period. And then we get reported twice I'm never sure, semi-annual, biannual, twice a year. We get reports on how they're doing. And then that's part of the evaluation for organizations that will be funded next year. Are you delivering on what the goals were? So we try to be very, again, accountable, transparent on that to make sure we're actually delivering care to the community. So that's largely it. So I'll go to the next slide, which is the embarrassing one. So this is the list I copied.
Yeah, that's embarrassing.
Yeah. But again, this is on the website, but again, these are some of the, the programs that focus, more on Mountain View. So obviously Ravenswood, used to be Mayview, Wisman School District, MVLA, Planned Parenthood, a Day Worker Center, Hope's Corner, obviously more, relevant to certainly community, the downtown committee here. And a couple at the bottom there, I mentioned Shack. So that's the background. And again, love to talk through if there are any that might tie specifically to this committee. Otherwise, maybe some just tie to you as individuals that work and live in Mountain View, but certainly want to be aware if you have thoughts on new programs. Again, we love to work with existing organizations with new programs or new organizations. I love to work with people, leading into February. So this is a great time. If you have any thoughts on new organizations. So yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
I don't know if Jamil or I call it people have new organizations.
So I have a friend who just recently gave birth.
Okay.
And just out of curiosity, she came home with a very large bill, even though she had insurance and everything. How does a person like that or a family like that can get help, let's say, covering those extraordinary expenses that they didn't count on after now having more, to worry about in their lives, a baby? Is that something that you also deal with on an individual basis, or do they have to go through these organizations in order to get some?
Yeah, well, so 2 parts to that. So yeah, they could just reach out directly to our finance department and.
In the hospital.
In the hospital, yeah. So yeah, I don't know if we want to spend time. So there are 2 different entities. There is the district, publicly elected, just like the city council. And then that district owns 100% of the hospital. And there's a law passed by the state 30, 40 years ago that all these district hospitals were having trouble competing, and it lets you operate somewhat differently. But in any case, yes, through the hospital, just reach out to our finance department and then they can negotiate that we can just discount or forgive bills on that. Could be a separate program, but otherwise they're not a specific program to come and ask to be funded for that because a bill is higher than normal.
Yeah, question. So I have several questions. So I served on the Human Relations Commission, and part of what they do is dole out the community development block grants, which are a federal program. So in any case, so the first year I did that, you end up with this book about this thick with all the grant requests. The money doesn't even begin to compare to this, but I just remember thinking there were all these organizations that were so deserving of attention, and we could only fund about half of the dollar request. I think you said about 75%.
Yeah.
So, but what is the shortfall of when, so in other words, when I was there, we could only fund half.
Yeah.
And that was even half of, less than that, because there were some new organizations that wanted to come in.
Right.
They hadn't had experience, so, you know, the easy thing to do is just do the people you've worked with before.
Yeah, so it says that we fund about 8 million for the district, applications were 10, 11, something like that. You know, most of the time, they're sort of fully funded. Occasionally, we'll have them take a haircut from what they asked for. And again, the scale of it, you know, the largest, like Mayview, is $750,000 or so, Ravenswood. Also about the similar for the county has a dental services right across from Whole Foods on El Camino. I think that's in Mountain View, I'm not sure. So those are some large, a lot of the school districts are maybe 200,000 for their nursing programs. But then, you know, there's some that are 20,000, 30,000, either new or smaller. WASI, Bay Area Women's Sports Initiative, they help do things at the schools. So that's the shortfall there is a couple million from what's requested anyway.
And then how do you coordinate with the county services versus what you want to provide in our healthcare district? How do you?
Yeah, so this group led by John Cowan generally works with them pretty closely. So that's, as you said, we fund that dental health care. And that used to be down off Old Francisco and Sunnyvale. So we just talked to them. I mean, generally, you know, they have certain responsibilities. That's a little unusual for us to fund another governmental agency. Generally, it's not for profits or other things. Of course, we do support the school districts, but you know, the county has a general. Yeah, so we talked to them and, you know, they're primarily responsible for certain areas. So,
One more question.
Yeah.
So I walked over to the train station this morning at San Antonio and came down the stairs to go underneath, and there were two guys shooting up. And that was the first time I've seen that. And so does your organization do, I guess I wouldn't say outreach. So the programs themselves would do the outreach to individuals.
Yeah, again, we don't have a formal, I mean, you know, we have various programs which people come to us at the hospital for mental health or substance abuse and that type of thing. You know, we don't have our own group that's going out into the community. There tend to be other organizations that tend to be better at that, so that's where we tend to try to partner with them and
So
fund
I guess
them.
my question, and I'm not, I don't want to take over the meeting. I'm just very curious about, I'm excited to learn about what you're doing. So within your priorities that you set, can you say this year, we see a rise in blah, blah, blah. We need to find organizations that take care of blah, blah, blah.
So as this trying to mention, we don't really look at it annually. So again, this is where we use the triannual assessment. So, you know, we can't turn on a dime. You know, this year we're up 23% on fentanyl or whatever it is. But so again, we try to work with other agencies that are, you know, whether it's schools, making sure the high schools are doing that. Yeah, that's how we try to identify the priorities based on that county-wide. And then, yeah, we can see if something explodes, we can try to do that. But a lot of times these community organizations are frankly closer to the health needs of different populations. And so we try to work through them a lot of times. But open to talking about doing something different. If somebody has an idea.
First question, were you finished with your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, I got a couple questions too. So first off, this community benefit program you said is through the district. Does El Camino Health itself also have a community benefit program, and does it mirror this or is it separate?
Yes. There is another program, so the hospital itself, you know, it's now called El Camino Health, but people don't always recognize that, so sometimes it's called El Camino Hospital. We have about 3 million a year. Frankly, that tends to be more outside the district. So, you know, at this point, and we can go way in the deep, we bought the Los Gatos Hospital, we have found that we believe that we can actually help the health of the district by ensuring the whole county, by serving the whole county. So for example, a number of physicians, independent physicians, were about to go under till we expanded this catchment area so they could run their business, taking people both from Los Gatos and Mountain View, and they could keep their offices in Mountain View by the hospital. So we really focus on not super South County, but sort of San Jose to Palo Alto, really the county of Santa Clara is what the hospital focuses on. So their $3.5 million tend to focus on Campbell or San Jose or, different organizations that serve the whole county as opposed to serving specifically Mountain View, Sunnyvale, Los Altos.
Okay.
And then the philosophy is the same priorities, because it's based on the same triennial area. And there will be some organizations that are funded through both.
Not to put you on the hot seat, but to argue as a community member, it would be that it would seem fairer to the community that supports and has the hospital, that also some of the generated income of El Camino Health also be reinvested into the district, rather than just refunding our taxes.
Yeah.
Why should Los Gatos, of course, you've got a hospital in Los Gatos. Why should non-hospital areas benefit from sort of what the community, the district puts out in hosting the hospital here? So.
On to the second part. So remember.
I got one other thing.
Okay. We're not trying to, we're not like certain politicians. We're trying to build a wall around the district. And frankly, it could be the other way around, that we get, like our Mother Baby is very famous. We got a ton of people coming down the 237 corridor. So frankly, the ability for us to have this $500 million new hospital is subsidized by people from outside the district. If we only, made money on people living in the district.
Traffic.
Well, yeah. So you can decide, but at least half of our revenue cash generates from people outside the district. So, anyway, this is the way we've decided to balance.
It's a
No,
philosophical.
that's a fair, no.
The other thing is just in terms of like the organizational aspect. You said the focus is really on healthcare needs and stuff. I know that El Camino Health also does do, I'd say it's like marketing oriented philanthropy, like sponsoring Los Gatos Jazz on the Plaza, community school of music and arts. So that's not through these community benefit programs. That's more sort of a marketing philanthropy program.
It has, yeah. So there's two parts. Yeah. So some of those programs, the marketing from the marketing department, there are some programs that they're health related. Like, if we wanted to hold a health day on Castro Street or something like that, that's something that we could apply and do through this community benefit.
Right.
So it tends to be, if we can tie in, or, if we should make sure we're at the Art and Wine Festival, you should reach out and make sure we have a booth there or something like that. But so there are smaller $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 things through the community benefit.
Thank you.
Do you have any volunteering opportunities, or is it always through the organizations you work with?
Volunteering in terms of,
Helping out, let's say, any of these,
no, pretty much, well, we have our main, the Candy Stripers for high school, and then we have our auxiliary that's primarily at the hospital. But in terms of these other programs, yeah, that would be through, through Mayview, through Columbia, through Hope, through whatever that would be.
Yeah, just to segue to, I volunteered for auxiliary for 5 years during constructions, it was very good, I recommend that, should, very dedicated people there. Our road runner for a little while,
Yeah.
Another one.
Yeah, at Rhoda.
I have a couple of questions here. You mentioned that there was a Rhoda Care
Yeah.
here. It's still there.
What happened was, it's sort of unintended consequences. So the good thing about accountable care is that more people have some coverage for healthcare. Because Rhoda Care was there for people that weren't covered, but then they just paid a portion of their care. But that model changed with people now being able to get care through more accountable care. So one, and also because of some gentrification, we didn't have as many people living in the area that needed the subsidized care. And frankly, some of the people that helped provide the care moved out of the area. So that was just, we couldn't, we couldn't support the program anymore. So that was about, $750,000 that we moved over into Mayview, Ravenswood. That's why that had to be closed.
Other one thing is CSA, Community Service Agency here, do quite a few things
Yeah.
like fairs and all that. So I didn't see that in the list either. So-
Well, yeah, I think, I don't know if I included that. Yeah, no, we fund their, I don't know if they have a program. I mean, that's up for them to come up with a program. I thought,
We have a health,
Health thing,
Yeah.
fair
Yeah.
type thing they do,
yeah,
but
so, yeah, I mean, we talk with them.
sponsorship
Yeah.
sorts of stuff
Yeah.
as opposed to grants.
Yeah.
now earlier we had a slide where you were talking about the diabetes and all the listing of it. Now, and you mentioned check one time, but I'm always concerned about the mental health in community. It is kind of alarming right now, and it has the attention, pay more attention to.
Yeah, so MVLA, that was mentioned there, we have a big program. I mean, I'll give a little side political note. I mean, one of the big advantages, so a lot of these district hospitals have gone under and they're run by Sutter, which is fine. I mean, Sutter does a great job, but then they take the excess money, it goes back to Sacramento. Like our ability to stay locally owned, like a couple of years ago, we opened a new $100 million mental health facility. And that was, mental health, the way the government funds things, that always loses money. I mean, our group is very proud when they break even without allocating overhead. But we can do that because we're making money and we're a community, so we don't have to send the money back. So yeah, there's a 36-bed in hospital and then a lot of outpatient for postpartum depression, high school. So that's a pretty strong program we have on the mental health. And then we do try to find other organizations in the community that have expertise in that area as well.
It's great.
Do you see any challenges to the income sources? You said you give out $9 million in grants. Do you see any future funding challenges as far as structural or how things are put together or how things are taxed?
So, I mean, it's tax money. The money won't go away.
Right.
And frankly, just 2 meetings ago, I had thought our philosophy was to give out all the money. Turns out we maybe been underfunding $1 million or so. And they're looking into that, why we're not giving all that we could there. I mean, the money will be there. Again, we may change the priorities based on, whatever happens, certainly like, we spent $1 million on COVID. Well, that wasn't in the plan, but for help us set up that LinkedIn building, the other Middlefield, the other side of 237. Anyway, so all of that type of thing. We just always need to be more patient focused. So like an example, when we first did the first testing for COVID, well, we did it from 7:30 to 5. Well, that's what time people worked. But who needed the testing? The people that were working 7:30 to 5. So I said, come on, guys. So yeah, okay, we expanded it to 7 and weekends, but they're not really always consumer oriented. So that's a broad philosophical challenge we have at the hospital.
So I was wondering that bringing it back to the downtown.
Yeah.
Like how, downtown business can take advantage of it, the identification of the thing and say that's where you go.
Yeah. So again, we've got Hope here. So it's, so one, if you can think of it, so we talked about, if you have activities, events where we should, somebody wants to come up with the idea of a healthcare fair or as part of another fair, love to, we should reach out to me, or John Cowan is on the first page of that doc, or I can give that to Amanda. He's the main guy there, or reach out to me. But so we are happy to work on any events together. Otherwise, people just have access, and employees, have access certainly to Ravenswood. We know where that is above the AAA building, and Planned Parenthood, not too far away. But I'm open to any thoughts on how to tie into this committee.
And like,
Mostly.
business BIA can set up something like that, no?
I'm sorry,
I mean, our business association here.
set up a,
DDA?
Yeah,
meeting, a presentation or?
no, I mean, set up the fair for the businesses here, or just not their review, is out of their reach.
Peter's.
I mean, we don't have to talk about it now. I mean, just.
No, just thinking, man, yeah, put it out there.
But again, I think that's more in the sort of the sponsorship, do you want to be a sponsor of a particular event as opposed to,
Yeah,
you know,
I was just thinking way out there. Okay, great. Wait. Any,
thanks, John.
that was great. Any comment from,
I don't see anyone online.
nobody online?
Well, again, as many of you do, Mike serves on one of the hospital committees, so,
That is a volunteer opportunity, by the way, if you're interested. There are committees of the board of directors, so.
Also, the auxiliary, when you volunteer for that, you really go down deep and you really see how it functions, It's just great,
Yeah, great.
Sometimes you see things you're gonna debrief, but yeah. Very good. Great.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Thanks for
Thank you
taking
very
the
much for
time.
being here. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I agree. I was down in Arizona last week. It was 114.
So you brought the weather back with you.
So moving on. We will move to 7.2 busking and amplified music. Staff would provide an overview of the rules and restrictions for busking, performers and amplified music.
Good morning, committee members, John Lang, Economic Vitality.
Speak up a little bit.
Economic Vitality Manager. This morning, I'm going to provide a brief overview of the issue of street performances. This has been on the downtown committee's radar for some time. This is just to really provide an update of kind of where things are at and, the thinking behind what we could be doing as a next step. So I stole a definition from Wikipedia on just what street performance is. Didn't come up with a very eloquent way of approaching this, but really, we do have busking that's occurring in downtown today, especially on the weekends. But even in the evening time, you will see people outside playing different instruments, seeking donations, tips, etc. So a little bit of background for everyone. Really allowing music, any form, so to speak, happens kind of in two ways. One is through a special event permit. So for instance, Art and Wine has music in different parts of downtown. That's all done through a special event permit. And then there's a amplified sound permit associated with that. In addition, on private property, you can get a temporary use permit if you're having live entertainment kind of uses on private property, is the vehicle with which to do that. So if people are playing in the pedestrian mall in the 100, 200, 300 blocks, there is no other vehicle to permit that activity. So really, busking is prohibited. And these are the two code provisions. One is a municipal code provision with the city of Mountain View. The other is California law. So don't need to kind of read these verbatim, but these are the two prevailing code references that pop up when it comes to busking. So when there is busking that is occurring, businesses or individuals can contact the police department if they are being disturbed or if there's crowds growing in a way that presents challenges for businesses. And basically they will be asked to move. And if they come back, they can certainly be cited. But right now, this process is a complaint-driven process. There is no proactive enforcement. It is a complaint-driven process. And so when this does occur, if PD does get complaints, they'll come out and ask buskers to move on.
Before you move off that slide.
Yep.
The penal code sounds rather strict. I mean, a misdemeanor is something that goes on a record and all of that. But it says accosts another for the purpose of begging. So you would have to be an aggressive busker in order to
Absolutely.
be privy to that one. Correct.
Correct. And I don't think the real intent, is really to go down this path. But that is a code provision that can be used to basically say, move on. And please don't come back. So those are the rules with which are in place today. So
And under the municipal code, is it an infraction? I mean, if it were
yes,
taken to the next level, it would be an infraction.
correct.
Okay.
So John, you talk about, good point, it's static, like if somebody busking right there, amplified music. How about if it's moving? It's like it was a bicycle with a big boom box and
boombox.
horn and it's moving continuously back and forth.
Jesus will save.
So that's not, so a bicycle moving is being treated the same way a car that has maybe a stereo playing very loudly. You could be in violation of noise ordinances that the city has. We're separating kind of things. Busking is someone that's playing for tips. Someone that's got a boom box on the back of a bike is just playing loud music. Really for their entertainment, not seeking.
Well, then the noise ordinance would kind of do it.
Noise ordinance,
No, I
yes.
mean, I don't think, yeah.
Yeah, so, and, maybe prior to going to the next slide, the other important thing to note here is, the one thing we did offer up to businesses in downtown as part of the implementation of the pedestrian mall and the patio license program. So as we were coming out of COVID times, there was genuine interest in trying to create a welcoming environment to downtown. A lot of interest in trying to help activate things. So businesses today that are in downtown that have a patio license can dedicate 75 feet within their patio to have someone playing music, non-amplified music. The purpose of this would be to be playing to the patrons of that business. So you're not necessarily busking to the general public for tips. You're there performing for individuals that are patronizing a particular business. So this would be very similar to what you will see in businesses inside. A lot of times they may have someone playing the piano or something to that effect, where you're providing that ambiance to the patrons. That is currently allowed today. We were piloting this to see if there was interest. So far to date, don't believe anyone has taken advantage of that.
So can you clarify, what exactly are you piloting?
So businesses that have patio licenses and the fences, you can dedicate up to 75 feet within your patio to have someone basically play a violin, a guitar to the patrons that are in your patio. So it cannot be amplified, but this was a way to see if there's kind of a there, because we don't have policies that allow for busking. We had heard from the business community, there was interest in having some type of ambiance for their patrons. So this was a way to pilot this. So this is allowed today, has been allowed since we've implemented the patio licenses.
And go first.
So yes, thank you. So the way that you framed it, basically there are only a few businesses downtown, maybe Agave, because they have a private patio out back. Steins has a private patio. area.
Scratch has their patio.
And
Yes.
Scratch, and I've seen people performing at Scratch, so nobody really has a patio.
Pascal's got his.
Sorry,
Pascal's a private patio.
So.
yeah, and Ludwig's, so, but nobody really has anything on Castro Street per se.
So, and there's a nuance here. I'm talking about the patios that are erected on the street.
Fenced in, right.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
these are the businesses that are paying rent to have
Okay.
dining on the street within that patio framework.
Okay.
You can allow up to 75 feet. Now, the things you just highlighted, that is private property. That is actually handled as a permit to allow music in your establishment. So it's-
Amplified music.
Yes, so that is it's a different animal. We're talking public right of way
Okay, all right,
versus private property.
okay.
So a couple different questions just for clarification, John. In the patio, we know that needs to be non-amplified, but you also, I just want to clarify, that does not require a permit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Whereas if it was on private property, it would require a permit.
That's correct.
If
Okay,
it's amplified.
no, it's not amplified.
Well, no, that's the question. Do you need a permit to have non-amplified music on private property?
Yes.
Okay, so that should actually say prohibits amplified or non-amplified music.
So
Well, but that's a public street. That's not a private patio.
So what I'm telling you is if you're having live entertainment, amplified or not in your business, you need a permit from the city. Inside the private property, the walls or that private patio like a Stein's, there's a handful of them. It does require a permit. So there is a distinction between private property and public property that's being used for private activity.
Has there been ever a discussion, or maybe I need to do this privately, to extend those businesses that do have a permit to operate, let's say 3 nights with live entertainment, to actually extend that throughout the week, especially now that the season is coming up where a lot of companies are looking for spaces where they can do private parties. Where they can, instead of doing every party at TUP, actually have that extended throughout the season or get a particular number of permits bundled.
So the best approach for that would be modifying the conditional use permit that exists on that private property. Would provide the greatest flexibility. So, so knowing that this committee has been very interested in this.
Sorry, John, one other question. Sorry. But, this whole thing about busking for cash or no cash, right? So the definitions and everything that I've seen so far has been about if you are soliciting. If I bring out my violin and I play on the street, do I need a permit? If I'm not charging anything, I'm just playing for the joy of playing and people gather?
So you're
Nitty gritty.
But it's real.
so
it's really-
the issue becomes if you get into the public right of way, if you're creating, even if you're doing this for kind of your personal sake, if you're creating crowds that are creating
Barriers to.
barriers,
Yeah.
you are creating.
You're obstructing the flow of traffic. basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So while we kind of use busking as a broad umbrella, the codes are pretty specific. You can't be blocking egress. You can't be doing these things. So whether you're doing it for tips or not, if you're creating crowds and disruption, you're going to be asked to leave, to move on. So So,
But theoretically, if you're not walking, you don't need a permit, correct?
well, there's no permit. You can't get a permit. There is no permit to get.
And then the other thing was, in the patio, when we mentioned that, you can play within the boundaries and all of that. Does this mean that they couldn't set out a tip jar? Because now they are playing for whatever the restaurant chooses to pay them or not, as well as they're now playing for tips they're soliciting.
So, once again, it was envisioned that this would be for the patrons. The provision on the patio license was not that specific, whether there's a jar
So
available.
if you're in
or
a
not.
piano bar, you could put $1 on the piano.
Right, that's what I'm basically asking.
But
Yeah,
that person is also employed probably by the establishment.
yeah, that's what I would think. And so I just want to make sure that it doesn't require.
But
a
the
different
public,
permit.
the public wouldn't be walking by and dropping money in.
Right, okay, that's about public drops.
So, so one of the things, knowing that this is, obviously of interest to this committee and obviously have heard from the community at different points in time, some interest in this. We have started to do some benchmarking. So there's programs and then there's ordinances. There's kind of two ways of developing this. Here's just kind of a quick snapshot of different communities and how they're dealing with busking street performances. One is codifying it in code. When you codify it in code, then you have the ability to do enforcement in a more strict fashion. Program, you're just trying to put more parameters around. I think one of the things that was at least interesting to me from a staff perspective was, and this was not curated for this purpose. I want to make that statement. All of them that we've come across have location restrictions. You can do this here, this location, this location, this location. It's not, you can do it anywhere.
Citywide.
Yeah. So, at least the ones that I've researched thus far have location restrictions about where it is appropriate to do this and where it's not. The other ones, the other interesting correlation was time restrictions. So setting times when you can actually be out there busking and when you cannot. And that has to do with times of year as well as time of the day and days. So I thought that was interesting. And then a handful allow amplified, some do not. And those that do allow amplified are generally only battery powered, not having plugs, because that ends up getting into trip hazards and things of that nature. So just a sampling of the different kind of programs that are out there that we're paying attention to, and I'll get into next steps in just a second. But
I was just going to ask, have you also looked at our immediate competition, Palo Alto, Los Altos, Sunnyvale?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Some people have programs, some don't, and it just happens. So going to continue to do more research. This was specifically looking for people that have
Have something.
identified program or identified ordinance that was written specifically.
It would be interesting to know what our immediate neighbors are
Yeah.
doing.
Because they're our competition,
Right.
in many ways, yeah.
So, just kind of next steps. So as I mentioned, staff's very much aware of interest from this committee and wanting to have these conversations about what it could look like as a potential formal program or ordinance. This is an action item within the economic vitality strategy, and I have it listed up there for your reference. This was not considered to be an immediate term fix. When we went to council and we're asking for their guidance on things that should be prioritized or not, this was not one that needed to be prioritized immediately. But it is certainly one of the action items within the strategy. But I did want to communicate to this committee, more recently, the economic development team has received a growing complaints from patrons coming to downtown with the busking that's occurring. In particular, the noise, there are people that are amplifying their music and they're plugging into the electrical boxes in the trees, which is not supposed to happen. So one of the things, kind of regardless of what a program could look like, definitely would need to do much more community outreach on this topic. Having talked with a handful of businesses, some aren't bothered by it, some are. And so more work needs to be done in just trying to understand community sentiment around this. But I did want to share that just within the last year, we've certainly seen an uptick in the complaints associated with the busking. And it's more been around the sound and it being too loud. And it does not appear to be necessarily the neighborhood. It tends to be people coming to the downtown, visiting the downtown.
What kind of volume? I mean, it's like people are saying that, blah, blah, blah. It could be one person. I mean, what, are we talking 500?
No, I would say we historically have not gotten complaints, and I would say within the last 6 months, we've gotten 5 or 10 of them now. So it was something that we weren't getting any feedback on, and now we are. So wanted to just I wanted to provide the other side of the equation. And having talked with different businesses, as I said, some aren't bothered by it. Others actually are quite bothered by it because it does impact their business. So whatever machinations come out of this is trying to find something that works for all, and figuring out what that balance is. So wanted to give some background, also wanted to just give an update on the complaints we've been getting. And because that was something we had not been getting until very recently. So other questions?
Is it because, have they talked about the type of music that has been, no? Because there's.
Some of it's not music. I mean, some of it is, I've
There was
heard
one
people, it's
guy
just
that-
noise.
Very,
There's
very.
people that
Yeah.
shouldn't be singing.
In public anyway.
Stick to your chow, right?
And just to add a little color, I mean, we hear from people who are maybe hard of hearing and it's hard when there's extra noise and they're trying to like talk with someone, even if it's nice music, even if it's something they would enjoy. They're saying it's difficult for them to distinguish, speaking versus the other noise or, so we've gotten a couple about that. Yeah, some of it has just been, so it's not even necessarily that it's too loud. It's just that there's other sound out there that is impeding their ability to enjoy their time downtown.
Is this is also part of our work plan? I think, I mean, not specifically, but I think it's sort of included sort of generically.
It is an item that has been on the forthcoming agendas multiple times. And because of what this committee does and reviews, obviously it's been memorialized in the EVS as an item, so it will certainly come back.
So I would just, without spending a lot of time in analysis, just what do Palo Alto, Mount Los Altos and Sunnyvale do? How do they treat it? That would be nice to get.
So what are the next steps on exploring this subject?
So staff will continue to research certainly the guidance that was given here today. This is an item that was not meant to be our immediate implementation. I think we do need to figure out whether this becomes a program, becomes a pilot program, a program, or something more formal as an ordinance. So work does need to be done in that vein, but we'll continue continue to do a little more benchmarking against our neighboring communities and what they're doing as it relates to this. And can certainly bring something back for this committee in the next couple months.
Also, the music, it depends, time of day, yeah, at night, later on, and day of the week also, there's that. Yeah, great, good job, this good info. Any more comments?
Well, I think if the city does allow, let's say, certain performers to come out, in order to vet those performers, I think you need to kind of even hear them out and see what they're performing like, instead of just like giving anybody that wants to perform necessarily a permit, let's say, to perform, if I think there needs to be some level of qualification so that,
Does that get into, does that put
Why
the
don't we
city in an
defer all
awkward
of that
situation?
until we get there?
Great.
yes.
Just saying.
Any member public?
I know, that's what I'm thinking.
I don't see anyone online.
No, okay. Great. So moving on. We'll move to item 7.3, Art and Wine Festival report, festival report out.
Righty.
Mountain View Chamber of Commerce staff will provide a report out of the 52nd Annual Art and Wine Festival that took place on September 7th and 8th.
Thank you.
That's great.
Peter Katz, CEO of the Mountain View Chamber of Commerce. And if I can go to the next slide, please. At a glance, for those of you who missed it, or even for those of you who were in the middle of it and just couldn't see beyond the block that you were working. We did go all the way from Evelyn down to El Camino and some of the side streets as well. Yes, we did have permits. And we had 400 artist booths, and this was filling in a lot of the spaces between the restaurants in the 100 to 300 block, which was something new that we did. 6 wine stands, six beer booths. This is pretty standard. This is generally what we do. 20 food booths / carts. That again is a pretty standard number. One of the things that we have been trying to do more and more of is involve our local businesses, whether with promotions or whether with highlights on the maps or whether with other kinds of wayfinding. And so we had 10 different businesses that were featured.
These are established businesses.
Yes, these are established buildings. These are ones that are there long after Art and Wine holds its tents. We also have 2 music stages. One is the community stage, which is outside of our office in the parking lot, and the other is in City Center Plaza, and that is of course the main stage. We have 6 professional bands, but of course on the community stage we have anyone who wants to come up and play. And the fun thing about the community stage is that we get a lot of really good performances there, right? Homegrown talent.
Yeah.
And it is generally full up. And we actually changed the orientation of the stage to give more seating area, and we filled that entire seating area again. So it was really, really well attended. Something that we've done the last couple of years that has been very popular have been a couple of ancillary art activities. I don't want to say installation because they really were interactive art. Of course, we have the artists who are in the booths that are up and down the street, but these are actual activities. One is this dance park and paint temple, which is this wall that people can go in and paint on while music is blaring and things like that. And it has a lot of interesting pieces to it. And then we have these chalk artists that are on the side. A lot of them are doing 3D chalk, where it looks like there's a hole that you fall in and it really isn't a hole and all that. And there's a place where also families can draw on chalk and all of that. And that's the idea here, is that we don't want to just be static. We actually want to have more engagement. One thing I want to stress is that that's separate from the kids zone. And the kids zone is a whole set of activities that are just geared towards kids, with a bungee jump and with I don't even know what you call it, a water ball or something like that. It's this
Yeah.
big ball in a pool, and you kind of go around. And we changed that up a few times in terms of what those activities are, but those are always really, really popular. And of course, it's free for the kids to use. The Pigskin Lounge is popular with those who don't want to miss any ounce of football that's being played, big screen TV. And of course, we do allow buskers on the street and in various spots, and they can be anything from a music to a street performer. There's one that performs right outside of Red Rock where he's, you know, balancing on the ball and juggling and all of that sort of thing that actually draws a pretty good crowd. So that's kind of at a glance what it looked like in 2024. If you'll go to the next slide, please. What was new and different? We did change some things up. First of all, we did work very closely with the city and very closely with the California artist, who is the one who recruits our vendors, to figure out how could we fit more tents in. And we wanted to fit the tents, the booths in to do two things. One is, of course, offer the visitors more things to see, but also to bring more people to that end of the street. One of the things that we had heard from a number of the businesses is, hey, you know, if all the action's happening way down here, how are people going to find us in the 100, 200, 300 block? That said, we don't want to get in the way of what's been set up so that the outside businesses, so we're trying to look for how do we partner together? And I think that worked pretty well this year. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. So one of our members is a Georgian wine seller. No, this is not from the little place next to Alabama and Mississippi. This is the city, the country of Georgia. I don't know if you know this or not, but Georgian winemaking has been around for thousands of years, and they do it in a new kind of way, an old kind of way, in that they actually have pits in the ground rather than casks. And it produces a whole different flavor. And their wines are award-winning. Some of their red wines actually were served at the White House. Anyway, and my wife took a trip to Georgia and came back raving about the wines. We now have half a cellar full of them. But anyway, point being that it's a chance to try something new and exotic. And so we had a booth set up just for that. We also had a tasting booth for St. Francis wine. They were a sponsor, and they set up a little what do you call those things? Like an Airstream, but it was like a bar that they could serve from. And what we're trying to figure out is, you know, there are a group of people who come who just say, give me red, give me white, give me sparkling. And then there are others who say, this is a wine festival. I want to try this and try that and try something different. So we're trying to find out what's the right balance.
Tasting.
Yeah, and how can we make that happen? And so we've been experimenting for a couple of years now and in better ways to make that happen. For the last couple of years, every year we've had a new logo. From a local artist. We have a contest, and the winner not only gets their logos on t-shirts and things like that, but we also have a booth set up for them so that they can promote their local art. We also have a booth set up for Artist Mountain View, which is really for fledgling artists in Mountain View. It's a program that the Chamber of Commerce partners with the community on. They meet at Red Rock once a month, and again, it's one of those things where we have a lovely, thriving artist community that nobody knows about in Mountain View. So how do we give them better exposure? And the Art and Wine Festival is, of course, one chance to do that. One thing that we did different this year is we did not have a merchandise booth. Why? Well, two reasons. One is it's expensive as heck. We've got to stock up on all sorts of stuff that sometimes sell and sometimes doesn't. And secondly, the demand in the last couple of years has been going like this. So we took a different approach, and we produced a few things for free, like stickers and some other things. But for the t-shirts, we contracted with a company called San Francisco, out of San Francisco, that does silk screening on site. So no inventory had to be carried by us. You walked up, you said, hey, I'm a large, I'd like this shirt, and they'll print it right there and then. For, I think it was $25 or $30, about what we would charge normally for a shirt. There was a bit of a problem in that it wasn't promoted well. And also some of our volunteers didn't know that we were selling t-shirts. They said, oh, we're not doing a merch tent, then obviously we're not selling t-shirts. No, not quite. We were. And so I think we could have done a better job in giving them more business. But it was an interesting concept, and I think it's worth exploring for next year as well. We also provided gift bags at entry. This was actually a sponsored, sorry, John wasn't here, sponsored by El Camino Health. And there were hand sanitizer inside, and you could just put stuff into it. And it was a fun little giveaway that was early on that you got at the ticket booths. So again, there was merch. We just didn't have a merch booth. We also were working very, very closely with the city last year in terms of recyclables and not using disposable glasses and things like that. How could we reduce the waste? And how could we be more in concert with what the city ordinances are and things like that?
Plastic waste
Plastic
specifically.
waste specifically, right. And so one of the things we looked at were the beer cups. Last year, we had these reusable beer cups called R cups. And that was both expensive and hard to manage. The city was very kind to pay the check for that. I think they looked at it and said, gosh, we really don't want to go that direction again. It's a very hard program when you've got an unbounded festival. When you're enclosed like at Shoreline or something like that, it's much easier to have, okay, as you leave, please leave your cup in here. It's much harder when you have entry points and exit points that
Well,
are.
I saw a lot of people putting the wrong cup in the wrong spot last year.
Exactly, exactly. And so we shifted then to using reusable beer cups instead. So they were aluminum, so that so they were sturdy. You could take them home, you could reuse them, you could rewash them. They were also made out of completely recyclable material. And that worked well. And so we'll probably do that again next year.
And they work well in the normal trash collection routine as opposed to having special
Separate bins.
collectors for special cups.
Separate bins, absolutely.
And merch, right? It's like,
Yeah, it is.
home a souvenir.
That's exactly right. And so we'll probably go that path again, but again, we work very closely with the city to make sure that we're doing the right things for the environment and for the city and so on. And in concert with that, last year, one of the biggest complaints we got was the trash situation. There were bins that were overflowing. They weren't put out soon enough. There weren't necessarily the three bins. There was only one bin in some cases. So we got a new trash collecting company to help us out this year. And they were great. They were on time. They set things out well. And we heard no complaints about the trash collection on that, with one exception. That was, there was a concern about people going through and looking for the recyclables at different points. One thing I didn't know is that the city actually gets revenue from the recycling that's in there. So we need to work on that a little bit. But other than that, the trash collection really went well. So, next slide. So I love the fact that, the 52nd annual was lived up to its reputation. It was a great event, an event like no other. We had about 180,000 attendees, which is back to, our 2019, 2018 levels. It's a little bit less than we had last year. Last year was just a banner year in many, many ways. We had about 190,000, but I'm not going to complain for 180. We did have about 370 volunteers, many of them around this table. Thank you very much for all of your help. It was a little harder this year getting volunteers, and part of that was because we had longer shifts. So we're looking at shorter shifts next year and hopefully get more people that way. We did have 200 of our volunteers show up at Shoreline for our volunteer party. So again, thank you for that, and I hope you had a good time.
What was the date on that?
That was the
Last Tuesday.
Yeah, last Tuesday. Was the volunteer party. And our net revenue was about the same as 2023. We were up in a few places, down in a few. So wine and beer sales went down a little bit, but our sponsorships went up. That was kind of how we balanced it out a little bit. The best sellers in terms of wine, this was a bit of a surprise. Last year, I mean, Sangria is always a bestseller, but the Chardonnay was a big seller this year. People shifted to Sauvignon Blanc, and we actually ran out of Sangria for the first time in 10 years. And this is increasing the amount that we order every year, but we ran out this year. I had to actually make a run to Costco in the middle of the festival. And Sauvignon Blanc was a big seller. And meanwhile, the canned cocktails, that went down a little bit, and yet we saw that up last year. So kind of hard to gauge what people's tastes are because the weather was very similar. It was very hot on one day and cooler on the other, but don't know. One of the things that we were really happy about is we did a survey of about a dozen of the local businesses, and we heard that instead of 10 years ago where they said, you know what, we don't even open on Art and Wine because, we always lose money. most of them were saying that, actually, we made a little bit more money than we usually do, or we broke even. So anywhere from a 10% to a 40% increase due to Art and Wine. And so I attribute that to a lot of the businesses being ready for Art and Wine. So either having special deals or special things or advertising, whatever, but also the way we were set up in such a way. Some of the things we're also looking at changing too is that how do we make sure that businesses that are highlighted aren't blocked by some of the booths? So we may actually have fewer booths down there, but more strategically placed, I guess, to make sure that access. We didn't block Monte Carlo this time, thank goodness.
Well, we didn't block them last time. Somebody moved in front of them.
So, in any event, we were very sensitive to those kind of things and made sure that that was.
Like my dad's people watching,
Were of the businesses, were those primarily restaurants or were there retailers that also exhibited?
We also have some of the retailers like East West was, for example. We tried to get books saying they were not this time, but they will be next time. Trash man was improved and from the back office standpoint, we all thought in the back office that it ran a lot smoother this year than last year. So
I may have missed it at the beginning. We had actually some of the restaurants that were included in our map as like approved vendors. So people
Local
would see
discovery.
what?
Local discovery.
Yeah. But so they, people would see them in Art and Wine advertising as opposed to, oh, it's just downtown business.
Yeah.
They're not part of the festival.
Yeah. And that number was up 2, I think, from last year. We had 8 the year before and 2 and 10 this year. So, yeah. Okay. So I think that's my last slide.
Yep.
Yeah. So open for questions.
That's great. So you took off a week after that? You take a rest, take a break?
I was in the office Monday morning.
Oh, they had to count the money.
Yeah,
No.
one of the things that people always say is that, gosh, Sunday night, you must have been just like,
Yeah.
off to party or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, well, there's actually a lot of cleanup and follow-up and all that has to happen the following week. But,
I went out both days and it was just amazing. I had a boot on because of my foot, but still, I mean, I went around and people were really excited and enjoying it, But there were no any incidents at all.
You know what? There were actually 2 police incidents that happened. And I'm happy to say that nobody heard about it because the police handled it in a nice discreet fashion. But one of them was rather serious. It involved kids with knives. So again, my kudos to the police department for handling it in a very, very good way. We did have 2 injuries that demanded that the paramedics come and help the people. But again, done kind of away from the main traffic flow. So there were incidents, but I'm happy to say that people didn't see them.
There was one thing, and this is kind of a city infrastructure thing. There are a couple of falling hazards. I mean, the way
Oh,
that
yeah. Oh,
the
yeah.
sidewalks and the curbs, they sort of roll. And I know we had a couple times where we had to go and put stuff up so people wouldn't walk there because people were like walking happily and then falling off the cliff.
Right.
Yeah, right in
So
front of the Mount View
using the
store.
large cone
Yeah.
for taping the street.
Yeah.
things like
Right in
that.
front of where we were by old bank building, but in front of the Mountain View Historical thing,
Mhm.
there's a woman with a baby carrier on the front, and she stepped off the curb, fell on the baby, and of course, everybody ran over and the kid was screaming but the kid was okay, but I watched that and I was like, oh my
Nice.
God, So, but how you do that, because she was busy talking with friends, she had
Right.
the kid in front of her, and didn't realize the curb was there. So I don't know how you, but to your point, Mike, yeah, I don't know how you.
There might be some more collaboration with the streets division.
Yeah, and maybe,
That's,
maybe some of those places where there's either put a cone or I
Yeah, we
don't
knew
know,
of one from
temporarily.
last year. If this is a new one, then please let us know so we can mark it for next year.
Okay, I'll be in touch with you on that.
Also, just if somebody sees, they notice some kind of problems, so who they can tell on festival. Right
So if
away.
they see something, so are you talking about if they see an accident or if they see?
No,
just
it just see
an
some,
area that needs
a
to be
danger, or
fixed?
something, yeah.
Just send a note to us.
No.
there's no way to advert, people aren't gonna read what to do. if
No,
you
no,
see
at that
it.
time, who they
Okay.
tell. at that time to,
They
Yeah.
should, at that time, they can either tell their block captain or they can tell, one of the staff.
I mean, like, because
Circulate.
we know about block captains and all that, that the guests don't know.
But they're
wouldn't
not, they're
be-
not gonna pay any attention to anything about, how do you tell 180,000 people what to do if you see?
No, I mean, if there's a,
I think your point is if there's commonly occurring people
Right, yeah.
tripping.
Well, we hear about it.
If there's anything that happens at the festival and a person doesn't know where to go, they should go to the info booth.
info booth or
Yeah.
something, yeah.
And the info booth will know exactly who to refer to and how to deal with it from there.
I mean,
Right.
people trip even when there's no festival.
Oh, yeah.
The other day, a guy was walking, you know,
Yeah.
the 2 steps, right?
Mhm.
And he had his hands and his just face forward, planted his face just because he got tied with his hands, you know? And he just went, I
Yeah,
mean,
you don't have
I mean, he
that.
got up and out of embarrassment
At least
took
they didn't
off.
break his wrists.
Yeah. It does happen, you know, even
Oh,
when
yeah.
it's-
I've taken a couple face plants this year.
Great. any
Good
more-
job, Chamber.
Great-
Yeah.
Great job, by the
Well,
way, yeah.
Thank you to our volunteers.
Yes, very nice. Any member of public? No, not on Zoom? Wow. Great, thank you very much, Peter, that's great. Beautiful. So moving on to item number 6, committee staff comments, questions, committee reports. And no action will be taken on any questions raised by the committee at this time. I'd like to bring this, you got it already, yes, this, we have a lot of, city of Mountain View is expecting applications for appointment to the, lot of committees with a lot of openings. So please look at that, and then maybe if you, this QR code, if we make the copy and give it to your, your contacts. And its due date is what, Jim, details? November 4th.
Can you remind us how many positions are open on the downtown committee?
1, 2, 3.
So there are 2 positions that are going to be, they're coming up on their expiration term. And we have, I believe, 3 other openings right now that are unfilled. So in theory, potentially 5 vacancies if people do not re-up their terms or backfill those terms.
Has the residency issue been resolved? I've heard that the city attorney's office has basically just said, yeah, never mind. Or,
So you're talking about whether,
well, whether a downtown business owner that doesn't live in the community.
It's not a
can
voter.
serve. I'd heard from council that it's sort of like a non-issue.
we need people.
At
Council
Well,
and judicial. don't know.
staff will certainly follow up with the clerk's office. though That was not the last guidance
Okay.
staff received.
So what is the rule? I mean, are they working on it, or is it still an edict, or what is the
It's
status?
going to affect your recruiting for this. That's the whole point.
So the last communication staff had with the clerk's office was a week ago, if anything changed, and was told, no, nothing has changed. So at this point in time, unless so the residency requirement is in the charter.
For, yes.
So can you
It
clarify,
is.
we're talking,
Well, okay, yeah, well, okay.
And once again, this is a topic, this is a section of the agenda we really should not be having discussions.
Right.
It's just communicating information. So
Could we get the city attorney to come to the next meeting and talk about it?
certainly, we can certainly inquire, ask.
so, but just to clarify, but not to discuss, so you're saying a downtown business owner has to be a resident of Mountain View?
Has to be a resident voting individual for Mountain View.
You're talking about on the Santa Clara County Register of Voters. So if they own a business and live elsewhere, they cannot, even though they own a business in this.
According to the current interpretation by the city attorney's office.
That, like Peter's point, that nixes some potential people.
Right.
Okay, I have a little report. So the Historical Association, we did a walking tour on September 22. We had 10 people participating. At the beginning of the week, we only had 4, and then thanks to the Downtown Digest, we got 6 people registering
Hey.
in a couple of days before that. We will not have a walking tour in October because I am out of town, but we will have them scheduled for November and December. But it's great. I enjoy doing them, and people are so interested in learning about downtown. So tell your friends and family. And you can find the information on the Mount View Historical website.
Perfect. Just to segue from there to end this thing, and thank you very much, staff, for their hard work. Without their hard work, we cannot function. Thank you again. So if there's nothing else, meeting is adjourned at 9:43. All right. Great.